Hello, Spookaroos. Welcome to Spooky Ass Shit. It's your boy, Eric Dwinells, coming at you back home in my apartment, but this episode was mostly recorded on the road. Yes, it's a very special ghost hunting on the road episode. And if you're into ghost hunting, you may or may not. I think this in general is going to be an episode that either you're going to love it or you're going to hate it. It's one of those kinds of things, kind of like the Ghost What the Fuck Are They episode. This is more of a stream of consciousness kind of thing. I went ghost hunting, but I went to a spot where, as far as I can tell, there's not a lot of legend built up around the ghosts that are supposed to be there. It just mentions that there are supposed to be ghosts at this cemetery in Royalston, Massachusetts. And it's supposed to be a spirit of a blonde lady and a shadowy figure that moves very quickly. And that's as much info as I could find on it. The thing is, this turned out to be a very frustrating day. And before I get to all that, of course, I want to remind you to check out the show's website. That is spookyas.com or spookyasshit.com. They both take you to the same place. That's the show's blog page. From there, you can listen to each and every episode, including the ones no longer available on your favorite streaming service. And you can also find links to all of our social media. We are at Spooky Ass Shit on Instagram, and you can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/spookyas. While you're there, please don't forget to join the secret closed group, the Spookaroos, where you can share all your thoughts about all things spooky without the weight of public judgment upon you. Okay, now, like I said, yesterday was a very frustrating day. It turns out the directions that I was following to get to this place were not the most accurate thing in the world. I had some technical difficulties, and I was running out of gas. It was the perfect blend for a horror movie, which you're going to hear me talk about as the show goes on. The other thing is, the sound quality is not the greatest on the stuff that was recorded during the trip. That's because it was kind of a windy day, and also I was apparently not holding the recorder correctly. I was holding it a little too close to my mouth, so there was an awful lot of clipping going on. The thing is great, but it's a little finicky, and I'm still learning how to use it after all this time. Still just learning how to work with it. I use the internal mics instead of an external mic for the first time, and well, you'll hear. Not unlistenable, but not quite the nice, clean sound quality that we normally have. All right. With all that said, I am going to play this as we go, but it is stream of consciousness, so I'm going to interrupt myself from the car with myself from the studio here and there. So let's go on a ghost hunt. And we are on the road, thanks to you guys. Last year we did our fundraising drive, and you got me the Tascam recorder, so we are able to do remote shows as we travel. I am parked right now outside of a Walgreens because every road trip begins with a trip to a CVS or Walgreens or convenience store of your choice to get some snacks and to get some drinks to have for the road, and of course batteries for the Tascam. Brand new, fancy, alkaline $10 batteries. So today we're going to be doing some ghost hunting because it's a beautiful day here in the Commonwealth, and we are going to drive out to a town that I have never been to. But the more I read about it, the more fascinated I became with the idea of this little town called Royalston, Massachusetts. I've never been there before. It doesn't seem like the kind of place that you would go to unless you had a reason to, or unless you were an outdoor and nature lover, because it does seem like they have some nice trails and stuff like that there. But other than that, there is one store in town. They used to have a restaurant, but it burned down a couple years ago. There's a library. There's a school that goes up till 6th grade, and then you're on your own after that. And they don't allow any other businesses in the town. So very unusual. We're going to go investigate this, but the reason we are going really is because one thing that they do have in this small town is a haunted cemetery. So we are going on a ghost hunt. So that's where we're going to head out now. I'm going to pull out of this parking lot and we're going to drive down there. I'm not recording while I'm driving this time. I don't have anyone to hold the microphones for me or anything. So this is just stop number 1, and now we're going to move on down the road. So at this point, I start driving towards our destination. It was over an hour away from where I live. It was about an hour, 20 minutes or so. That's how long it was supposed to take. But as we're about to find out, it wouldn't be as easy as all that. The first website that I found that mentioned this particular cemetery mentioned that it was on a place called Bliss Hill. So I typed in, didn't give an exact address, it just said Bliss Hill. So I typed in Bliss Hill. I figured if the town's that small, it can't be that hard to find. Typed in Bliss Hill into the GPS and made my way on out there. Bliss Hill Road basically runs through a forest, as you're about to hear me talk about. And it is a very long road, especially when you're trying to keep a keen eye out for something and not seeing much but forest and a few scattered houses. But let's take you now to me on the side of the road talking about this very moment. Okay, I am pulled over on the side of a very, very much country road here in what I think is Royalston. I can't even be sure of that because there's no signs around here for nothing. And I've been looking for this little cemetery. All the websites say that it's very small, so I'm not sure exactly what you're supposed to look for aside from a short stone fence. It turns out the directions that I got were not quite accurate, so I'm trying to get new directions, but guess what? Just like in all good horror movies, there's no signal out here. I can't get it on my GPS. I have to drive back maybe to Athol or something like that. Athol's the next town over, and by the way, can we talk about that for a second? What a name for a town. I feel bad for the kids growing up in Athol and going to Athol school. It's just too close to certain curse words. But, I mean, I grew up in Ashland, and I thought we had it bad being called Trashland all the time, right? But I think to be like, oh, you're an Athol, that's worse. All right, well, I'm going to keep looking. I'm going to try to find this place. The idea here is that there is a blonde ghost and a shadow figure that lurk in this tiny cemetery. So, listen, people say they feel ominous feelings of being watched. Just reading about the town, before I even drove into it, you kind of get that kind of feeling because it's a small town. The population is only, I think, 1,200, right around 1,200. That is crazy, crazy small. And the town is mostly forest. But there's a little section of housing on the southern end of town, they say. And like I said, the one restaurant and everything. Well, I'm going to try to get my lunch if I can ever find this place. Also, just like all good horror movies, I'm almost out of gas. I thought I'd have enough to get through this trip and then go back. And hopefully I will. But we'll see. I guess that's what AAA is for, if I can get a signal. All right, let me continue this journey. And I will, next time I report, hopefully will be from the cemetery. So as you can hear there, a little bit of frustration creeping in, but not so bad yet. I still sound pretty optimistic. That will change. That will change as we continue on. Now, like I mentioned there, when you read about Royalston, you see pictures and it looks like a nice, quaint New England village, and that's the idea. That's what they're going for. That's what they want it to be. But you also, when you read like the ghost hunting websites and everything, you kind of get the feeling that like this is one of those small towns where they sit there on the porch and there's like a weird-looking old man and everything, and he's like, "We don't take kindly to strangers in these parts," you know, something like that, you know. And it's not like that at all. The first road that I was on there, Bliss Hill, which is basically how I made my entrance into town, is maybe a little bit creepy just in the fact that it goes right through a forest. There's no cell, as you heard me mention. I had a hell of a time trying to update my maps, and it was that part was rough. And there's no gas stations or anything like that, which was bad news since I was running out of gas, like I said. But this was the perfect start to a horror movie. If only I was a group of teenagers instead of a lone, nearing middle-aged man, then it would have been the perfect makings of a horror movie. But things are about to get curiouser and curiouser as we go on. Let's hear more about that. am having the most paranormal day that I've experienced so far, minus perhaps the ghost of the house that I grew up in. Or the internet connection is just so bad out here that you can't get half decent directions to a goddamn thing. It took me into New Hampshire, told me to go down this highway, turn onto a road there, and then turn back around and come back the way I came. There were plenty of other places I could have turned around. It didn't have to take me out that far. And this is all in the boonies. I'm in Richmond, New Hampshire, I think is the name of the town. It's much more developed than Royalston, but still, very unusual that this would happen with the GPS. But I guess I'm guessing that it's mixed up signals somewhere in outer space due to not so great internet access out here amongst the mountains and forest. But who knows? Maybe it's a blonde-haired ghost or a spooky shadow person. Alright, that's where I started to get really kind of pissed off. I didn't see any kind of cemetery on Bliss Hill Road, and then I'm trying to get a new connection because I remembered seeing a different address for the cemetery on a different website, so I was trying to find that, but of course there's no signal, so that was very frustrating. I'm trying to update my map, but that won't happen because there's no signal. And also, something I didn't mention just there, but I feel more comfortable telling you now. When I stopped at that Walgreens, I got a trail mix, right? And I don't know what's going on, but I think as I'm getting older, I'm developing a nut allergy. So those peanuts in that trail mix, they weren't sitting right, if you can catch my drift. So I was dealing with at least 2 emergencies, both of them gas-related. That's TMI, but these are the things that I'm dealing with as I am looking for a cemetery to find ghosts that I don't believe in a town that I've never heard of, crossing a state border that I did not mean to cross. And the thing was, this took me from Bliss Hill, right? Maybe if you're out there, you know the area. But anyway, I took a left at the end of Bliss Hill, and that is what took me into Richmond. Now, from there, I was able to get my signal back. I pulled over at like this intersection, and I got my signal back, and I was able to update my maps, and it said, okay, go down this highway, take a right, and that's when it just stopped when I was on that road. And it just kept saying, in 1 mile, in 1 mile, in 1 mile, and that's all it would say. And I was like, God damn it. So I was like, well, let me just turn around. So I turned around, and then all of a sudden it gets its bearings back, and it says, okay, now you're going to turn left. And it was taking me back the exact way I just came. It basically just took me on a 15-minute diversion, and I went right back into Massachusetts. I went right by the intersection with Bliss Hill Road and continued on my way in what was now, hopefully, the correct direction to get to the cemetery, which was on Athol Street in Royalston. So let's pick up there. Okay, we are finally here. I was supposed to get here at 11:53. It is now 1:03. So over an hour later than I was supposed to go, thanks to these wacky GPS directions. And also, I actually passed by the place one time. I saw it. I said, okay, that's the place. But I had to keep going because I was so low on gas that I was afraid if I turned my car off, then I was never going to get it started again. So I had to drive to the nearest gas station, which, by the way, was a good 15 minutes away, back in Athol. So I had to go back to Athol to come back to here, and now I'm here. And I have to say that this cemetery is not spooky at all. It's just outside of the town center, which is a lovely town center. I'll talk more about that in a minute. But the cemetery is just lovely. It's on a bright, sunny little kind of hill area. Like I said, just outside of town. It is small. It's not as tiny as I thought they made it sound, but it is pretty small. I'm not out of the car yet, but as I look around now, I don't see any ghost or shadow figures watching me. And the spookiness of the roads leading into town, the country roads leading into town, like Bliss Hill, that was kind of a spooky road in the sense that it's covered by mountain and everything, and there's not a lot of houses, although there are some, and the ones that are there are kind of set back. But once you get to the center of town, it's just a very nice looking, quaint town. They have a town hall, they have a library, they have a post office, they have a congressional church, and then just some houses, nice houses around. So I have to say, Royalston is a nice, pleasant little town to visit. Now, the thing that I ask myself as I sit here now is, I drove all the way out here. It was supposed to just be about an hour. It ended up being over 2 hours. And what did I expect to see? You know I don't believe in ghosts if you listen to the show for a long time. So what did I expect to see when I came out here? And the answer is really nothing. But now that I'm here and I've spent all this time in the car, what was it all for? I sit here, I'm a grown-ass man, hunting ghosts. I'm going to try to get some EVPs and all that kind of stuff as I walk around here a little bit. We'll see what happens. But otherwise, man, I don't know. I feel like there were better ways I could have spent my day. Although it is a lovely town. I'm not knocking you, Royalston. But I don't know. All right, let's go investigate the cemetery. And now I think you can really hear where the frustration started to kick in, where I was questioning my life choices that have brought me to this moment. I was pretty much done by this point, which was bad news since I just arrived at the cemetery. Not only that, but once I got there, the house across the street, they are motorcycle people. Nothing against that, totally fine with that, but they are very loud. So I was waiting for them to get on their way, which seemed to take a good 10 minutes before I could start recording in the cemetery. So that was also very frustrating. So you got to keep all of this in mind. I've been in the car for a long time. Had these gas problems, you know what I mean, all of them. And got ripped off at the gas station, by the way, but that's another deal. And had to drive all the way out there, and then I'm driving back and all this stuff. So now I'm just done. And you heard me mention going back to the town center and all, and looking for the one store in town, which also serves as a deli counter, I guess, from what I've gathered online. And that was totally my plan. I thought I was going to go out there and have this nice, pleasant little visit, maybe talk to some people about the ghost. That did not happen at all, because by the time I was done in the cemetery, I was like, I want to get home. Forget this. Forget all of this. But I did swing back through the center of town, which I'll tell you about at the end. But for now, let's pick it up in the cemetery. So here I am doing my actual ghost investigation. Okay, I'm actually in the cemetery now. And like I said, it looks like a very sunny, peaceful spot, although it is surrounded on four sides by woods. That's a little creepy, but if you're like me, you like the woods, so that's no big deal. I will attempt to make contact with the spirits in my own unprofessional way. As you know, don't believe in spirits, don't believe in contacting spirits, so I'll give it my best shot. If there are any spirits haunting the cemetery, if you are the spirits of people that have passed on, I want you to know that I come in peace. I have an open mind. I believe that it's possible that you may be here, and if you are, I would love to have your company on this bright, sunny June day. If you are a demon, and if you are a demon pretending to be a ghost, I want you to know I am on to you, I am prepared with this knowledge, and I am in good with the boss. So don't try anything with me. All that out of the way. Is there any spirit here that would like to make contact? please, I'm very lonely and I could use some company out here. It was a long drive, and it would really help make it worth it if any of you would like to speak up. I would especially like to meet the blonde lady, but if she's not around, I will settle for the shadow person. For the record, I have heard no response to my questions or statements. However, I am being surrounded by those little bugs that come out. Are they June bugs or is that something different? They're smaller than flies, but they're like flies. They hang out like swampy areas, stuff like that. So, I don't know. Maybe that's something. It's not, but some of you might like to pretend that it is. Spirits, I will give you one last chance. If you are out here, it looks like most of you are from the 1800s. I would love to hear about your life back then. I would love to hear about what you've been doing in the afterlife since then. Or if there's a, say you're here because there's a mission or something you need to finish, I'm here to help. We have like all kinds of crazy technology now. I can try to get in contact with your family and stuff. I mean, everyone that you knew is gone now. So if you're one of those spirits that doesn't know they're dead or anything, then, that might be a problem for you. But in that case, the good news is you don't have to worry about getting them messages or anything anymore. You just take it easy on your own and, enjoy your afterlife. That's like the one good thing about being dead is everything, all the bullshit of living is gone. So just kick back and relax. Right? What do you want to be haunting a cemetery for anyway? That's something I know I've talked about that on the show before, but it's something that bothers me every time. In theory, your spirit leaves the body before you're buried, right? So why would you be haunting a cemetery? Maybe to be close to your earthly remains, but that's not usually how the stories go. And then sometimes they say, well, it's because that's where people grieve for you, so you're attracted to the grief. Well, okay, but even then, only for so long. Like, these people died in the 1800s. There's nobody still grieving for these people now. Nobody here knew these people. And their relatives probably moved away a long time ago. I don't know, it just doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense to me. If I'm a ghost, I'm not haunting a cemetery. There's one gravestone over here that I can see that's kind of upturned. I'm going to go check that one out. So there you have part one of me in the cemetery trying to get these EVPs. As you heard, I don't hear any spectral voices on those recordings. I did enhance the area there where you were listening for a response from the spirits, and all I heard was some chirping of the birds, which incidentally just drove my cat a little crazy. She was on high alert when she heard those birds as I was playing it back here in my luxurious studio apartment. And so not much to report there. I'm going to play a little bit more here, wrapping up the cemetery, and then we're going to have a nice little talk after the fact about ghost hunting in general. So stay tuned for that, but let's go back to the cemetery and wrap it up with the conclusion of that segment. And no, nothing too exciting over here either. It's too worn out, I can't really read it. It's mostly on its side. It's sad to see that, especially these old cemeteries like that, when the headstones start to go. People do come out here, because they have the veteran flags and all that. So there's still people coming out here. It looks pretty. I was going to say pretty well maintained, but it just looks pretty. Again, just a note, I am being followed by what I think is a bee. I don't know. I'm wearing my hat, so it's hard to see over the brim. But I think that was a bee flying around my head. So there are critters out here. But other than that, no, I don't think there's much to this haunting. But who knows? Maybe they just don't want to talk to me because they can tell I'm not a true believer. But I am open-minded. It's not that I absolutely refuse to believe. If I saw something, I'd believe it. But so far, nothing to report. So as I feared, this day is pretty much a bust, but I expected that. It's not like I came out here thinking I was going to see a ghost or something. Would have been nice. That would be the way of the world, wouldn't it? That someone like me is like the first person to get conclusive proof of a ghost. It is hard though. What is conclusive proof? Even if I got video footage, you'd say I doctored it. If I did get an EVP, you'll all say, well, it's this, this, or this. And I'd be right there with you. It's probably not a ghost. It's any number of things other than a ghost. So, I don't know, man. I think I'm not a great ghost hunter. But on the other hand, maybe I'm the perfect ghost hunter because I don't get caught up in all the bullshit. But anyway, I'm just about to leave the cemetery now. I've walked through the whole thing, visited all the stones, said hello, invited them out. No ghosties or ghoulies came out to play. Just a nice, pleasant cemetery. And that wraps up my investigation, but not my final thoughts. Now, there is one more bit of strangeness that I want to mention that I didn't mention on the recording because it happened just before those motorcycle folks I started talking about, and then it kind of it wasn't happening anymore, so I couldn't record it, so I thought, why mention it? But let me mention it now. When I walked towards the back end of the cemetery, which is kind of down a little hill and a little bit more private, you can't see the road and all that kind of stuff from there. That's where I decided to try to get those EVPs. And right as I was walking towards it, I was right near the edge of the woods. I will say, it's going to sound crazy. I'm going to explain it, though, in a second. So it's not as crazy as it sounds. But as I was walking towards those woods, I did hear what sounded like a little bit of a roar coming from those woods. But what it really sounded like was not like the roar of an animal, but more like, like sometimes when you hear a plane passing overhead, not when it's real close, but when it's like way high up there, and I can't do an impersonation of the sound. I tried several times just now before I started recording this section to try to get like the right sound, but that kind of like wavy, it comes in waves, sound that you hear like when a plane flies overhead. It kind of sounded like that coming from the forest. Now, I don't think that there was any kind of evil specter waiting in the forest making these growling noises at me or anything like that. I think there probably was a plane in the sky up either off where I couldn't see it or higher than I could see it, and that's probably what that was. But in any event, as I was pondering this, that's when those motorcycles started revving up their engines, and by the time they were gone, so was the sound that I was hearing, and like I said, thought maybe don't comment on it. But for those of you who would love to point out and say, no, see, that's a ghost thing, and you just didn't know about it, so then I thought I'd at least mention it for you so you can have a little bit more ammo. Now, when I completed this section, I did drive back to the center of town, and there were these two trucks kind of parked on parallel sides of the road, talking to each other, social distancing, talking out their windows to each other. But they were on like the main street that goes through town. So I drove by them one time, and I took the right down this road, and it just turned into like a road. There was nothing exciting to see down there. So I turned around, and I went back to try to go back near the library and the town hall and all that stuff. Had to pass these trucks again. So I went there, but I still couldn't find the one store in town. I didn't look too hard, but I went up and down this road and didn't see it. And then I said, well, let me go back towards Athol, because when I was getting gas, there was a little store that I want to check out over there called Just Stuff. And I thought, well, that's a fun name for a store, and let me see what kind of stuff they have. So I drove back, but now I had to pass through these trucks again for the third time. So I said, well, I can't just keep exploring this little area with these people sitting out here. And I was already frustrated, so I went on my way to Athol, and I went to that store, and by the way, they didn't have anything good. And what occurs to me now is that, I found different sources to try and find the cemetery, and they both have the same information, which is that people report seeing a blonde specter and also a shadow figure that moves very quickly in this tiny cemetery. And like everything that's written about it, that's about all it says. There's no legend, there's no nothing. And they list different addresses. But the addresses are very different because Bliss Hill Road is not near Athol Road. And it occurs to me that maybe one of these websites had the wrong cemetery. Maybe the one that I went to was not the correct cemetery because, like I said, it's small, but I wouldn't say that it's tiny. Compared to modern cemeteries that can go on for acres, yeah, it's small. But it's not like I've seen smaller, And so maybe this was not the right cemetery that I was in. Maybe there really is one on Bliss Hill Road that I just missed. I did see several small stone fences. I tried to look past them into the wooded area beyond, but I didn't see anything that looked like a cemetery. That doesn't mean it's not there. These old aging eyes of mine might have just missed it. And certainly Bliss Hill Road is a much spookier setting than the one on Athol Road. Because, like I said, you're surrounded by the forest, and it's not like pretty, kept forest. It's forest. So that, if you're in there on a dark and spooky night, that would definitely be a lot creepier than the one on Athol Road, which I said is very well maintained, very bright and sunny during the day. I suppose any cemetery could be creepy at night if that's what you're going there for, but this one in and of itself wasn't very creepy. The other thing I want to mention is how I got the EVPs. Now, I know that everybody's got their systems, and obviously this is more of a tongue-in-cheek ghost hunt. Although, like I said, I am legitimately open to the possibility, and if I had gotten something, I certainly would have shared it with you and said, hey, this is really strange. I've done that on the show before. I've posted EVPs, and I've said, like, oh, this is kind of weird. I wonder what this is. My first thought isn't, oh, this is definitely a ghost, and here's the proof, but it's open for debate, so let's talk about it. This one, I only hear birds, but write in and let me know if you hear something different. But I did record just using the Tascam recorder, and I did turn the audio all the way up when I played those clips back for you just to see if there was anything that we couldn't hear. Now, the thing that I find funny about EVP recordings is that if you are a fan of ghost shows like I used to be growing up, where they do go on ghost hunts, I remember in the 90s they would be like, okay, now this is high-tech recording equipment, and it's not like what a regular normal citizen would have. This is very fancy, and it's digital. It's not analog. It's not like a cassette tape that I'm recording to. So this is very high-tech, very frequencies, and it can hear things that the human ear, and blah 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 blah. Okay. Now, because, and they were saying this because in those days it was hard to get a digital recorder, and if you did have one, like, most people were kind of priced out of it. People that were curious about ghosts were kind of priced out of it unless they were going to take it professional and become ghost hunters, right? But so they didn't really have anyone to challenge them on what they were getting because they were the only ones that had this equipment, or people that were using them for the purpose that they were built for, which were like studio engineers or college professors or recording lecturers or something like that, right? But now it's very common trend that they say, oh no, we can't use digital recorders. No, we have to use analog because the spirits need a physical manifestation to put onto, or whatever excuse they have. And because now is the time when most people are not using analog, and that would be like a specialty thing that you would have to track down and find and then go out and record with to try to bust people on that. So it just seems a little suspicious to me that, like, whatever the tech that everybody has at the time, that's not what you're going to catch spirit voices on. You need to get this special equipment that only certain people will have, or only certain people would think to seek out, or only certain people would use in this way that is not the way the machine was intended to be used. Just seems a little strange to me. There's lots of things about ghost hunting that I would like to talk about and bust on, but, that's all that we're going to talk about for today. So, like I said, this was a little bit more comical than most ghost hunts. I was frustrated as hell by the time I got to the cemetery and by the time I was doing these EVPs, so forgive me if I seem not quite my normal jovial self in those clips, but I have a feeling a lot of you are going to like those when I get a little bit worked up. But it's not bad, right? Like, for someone who's getting worked up about something, like, that was pretty mellow, right? Shows you I'm a pretty mellow guy. All right, there will be more ghost hunting in the future. Hopefully I'll bring some friends next time. Hopefully this coronavirus will be over and we can get back to doing fun things like that. And then I won't be so pissed off because I won't feel like I wasted a whole day driving around to look at a bright and sunny cemetery. It's always something, folks. All right, please remember to subscribe, rate, and review. Those reviews really do mean a lot to me. I love to get encouraging feedback, or any kind of feedback, really, but especially encouraging feedback about the show, and it means a lot to me. So please go ahead and do that if you have not done so yet. Leave a kindly worded review. And until next time, don't be afraid.